Today I'm going to show you how to go from this to this. Okay, so I've already gotten started and I've done my eyebrows off camera. I will list everything in the description below as to what I've used. I also have taken concealer and I have carved out the bottom of the eyebrow. I like to usually keep the top more natural for like a little bit of a fluffier effect. You can always go in with brow gel. A lot of people use the soap method of doing the eyebrows with soap just to give a fluffier appearance. I haven't done that today, but that is an extra step you can take. I plan on making a full in-depth eyebrow tutorial video coming soon, but as of right now, I've done it off camera because it's just a little easier and faster that way. Usually eyebrows take a good amount of time. Next, I am going to take concealer and I am going to use that as my primer, and I am going to put that all over my lid, and that will give the eyeshadow something to stick to. Some people like to set their primer or concealer. Personally, I don't. I actually like when it is a little bit tacky. That way it grips the shadow a little bit better. But sometimes also that is a little more advanced of a technique. Whatever you are more comfortable with is whatever you can do. I personally don't set it. You can try either way and see how it works for you. Today I'm actually using the Kylie Cosmetics concealer. I like it because it is not such a thick concealer and it gives a little bit of drying time. Some concealers dry so fast that right now, if I were to go try to blend this out, I wouldn't. I would really have a tough time blending it out and it would kind of bunch up in some areas. But this one I like because it isn't like that. It is more of a wet formula, so I am able to work with it. And I have a little more time to do so, but that's just a preference. Whatever works for you and whatever works and that you have in your kit or your arsenal, you feel free to use. Okay, so then it should look a little bit something like this. And I also like to use concealer as well rather than sometimes eyeshadow primers. Sometimes they are transparent. So if you have a lot of discoloration on your eyelid and like veins, blue veins, you can still see that peek through and it won't give you as nice and even clean base. Today I'll be using the Tati Beauty Textured Neutrals palette. I like this palette a lot because there are quite a few things you can do with it, even if you don't think that there are. There are pressed glitters that not everyone is a fan of, and they are messy, I will admit, even for myself. I'm not the biggest fan of glitter, whether it's pressed or loose, but it's completely up to your preference. I like how it's mostly a neutral palette, but there are still pops of like orange and pink as well that make it a little more fun if you have someone who wants to get into the realm of color but isn't quite sure where to go. That is the palette that I recommend. So I'm actually going to be starting with Matte Soothe from the palette, and I am going to be taking this in the crease I prefer a fluffier brush to start because it's not as dense, so you're not going to pack too much color on first swipe. So if you do feel like you've made a mistake, it is easier to buff it out. So I am taking that on my brush. This is actually a Morphe R35. This is actually one of my in my brushes here, and I also have it in my makeup kit to use on clients as well. So you'll hear that noise. I like to top off the excess so that I don't have too much pigment, because this is a very actually pigmented palette. I do feel like it is user-friendly as well, but sometimes if you're beginning, you don't want so much pigment all in one swipe. So you kind of want to tap off the excess. You can just tap it on your palette, tap it on your drawer, tap it on your head. It doesn't really matter. So I am going in and I am putting that in my crease. I personally like to go up from where my actual crease is just so that I have more of like almond shaped eyes, which is not a problem, but sometimes that does make my eyes look a little smaller than they are. I don't really necessarily love that look, so I bring it up a little higher. And honestly, the key to blending is just to blend till your hand falls off. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, you don't have to go in with crazy expensive brushes. It's really just the act of going back and forth, and even sometimes circular swirling motions that really get the job done. And this is also too where I like to go in with like a little bit of a lighter shade first so that I can build it up, as opposed to going in with so much pigment right off the bat that I am gonna have to try to blend that out and diffuse it. So if you're going in with more of like a darker color, like a black color first, it's gonna be pretty harsh and you're gonna really have to blend. I mean, you're gonna wanna blend a lot anyway, but it's almost like you're gonna have to do at least 2 times the amount of work that you normally would have. But also at the same time, you get the most depth and the most amount of payoff when you start with the darker color first. So you're just going to continue to blend until you are happy with it, whatever that means to you. And then also too, you can add another color, and if you feel like you're losing a little bit of your first color, your transition color, you can always go back and add more. That's what really makes blending seamless. You have to add multiple layers. So I'm at a point where I'm pretty happy with it. I know it looks crazy right now, and that is why I like to start with my eyes first, because it doesn't look like I have any fallout and any pigment that has fallen on my face, but if I wipe some of this away, you will see that there actually has pigment that has fallen onto my face. Next, I like to go in with a brush that is a little smaller, a little denser. This is a Morphe M433, and I go in with a color that is a little bit darker, so I'm using Ritual, still from the matte selection. And I'm going in, and I'm gonna take this a little bit lower than where I put that first color. You don't want to put it as high as that first color, because then it just overtakes that transition color that we used. And I usually like to keep it on the outer half. I don't like to bring it in too much into where the inner corner of my eye is. You can, but that's a little bit more of a halo eye where people have depth on the outer portion and inner portion, which you can of course do. That's more of like a halo eye. But today for this look, that's not really what I'm going for. And then I'm just going to repeat that on the other eye. And just keep blending. Honestly, this is what most of your time is gonna be spent. I usually take more time on my eyes than on my face. I can do my face makeup in like 10 minutes, like a full face application with foundation, blush, bronzer, contour, highlight, liquid highlight underneath here, and then highlight on the cheekbones. I can do that in like 10-15 minutes, like no problem. Especially once you found your products that work for you, it's just, it like flows. And when you're doing it every day, you just find that it just is so easy after a while. Okay, so I'm at a point where I'm pretty happy with it so far, but I do kind of want to diffuse some of these edges. So I'm going to go in back with Soothe on my first fluffy brush, and I'm just gonna buff out that edge a little bit more so I don't have a harsh line. It doesn't look super harsh, but it is a little more than what I want. And it just softens everything when I go back in with that first transition color. And then honestly, you can stop here if this is kind of what you're looking for, or you can go in a little darker. It's completely up to you. Okay, so next I am going into Memory Matte from the palette as well, and I am using a smaller brush. It's even smaller, but it's not quite super dense, so I am still able to blend. It's not like I'm gonna place this on my lid and it's gonna be stuck and I'm not gonna be able to blend with this. This is a Morphe M507, and this is, I think, literally my favorite brush I have in my makeup collection. And then this I am taking super low in that outer V, just for a little more depth. And so it's a little smokier. And with eyeshadow, it's just all about building. You want to be able to build until you're happy with it. So whatever that means to you. You don't have to go in with black, but I will say black, it definitely photographs better than if I were just using that lighter brown and then that mid-tone brown. And then I'm going to go back in with Ritual, which was that little bit of a darker brown from that first color we used, and then just go in and blend and diffuse. And really, that's just how you get seamless eyeshadow look. And you can literally do this until your arm falls off. That's why I spend so much time doing my eyeshadow. It's because you're just repeating the same processes over and over and over again until you're happy with them. And then this is what I am working with so far. I am going to put something on the lid, but this is just, it's a little more seamless. I've used 3 colors so far, and this is what we are working with. So next I am going to go in with Metallic Aura, and that is the name of the shadow. It is the lightest color in the palette, and I'm going to put that on my lid. You can go in with a brush if you'd like, but I feel like a lot of times with these metallic or shimmer shadows, you kind of want to go in with your finger. If you have long nails, this is going to be a little difficult, maybe even almost impossible. So you can go in with a brush, like in that inner corner. I'm actually probably going to have to go in with the brush because that is not, my finger is not going to fit in there. And then I just repeat that on the other side. And I'm going to take that same color on the inner portion. And if you hear something, I have my 2-year-old daughter next to me. She is playing in my makeup currently, so I'm sorry about that, but if you're a mom, you know the struggle. And this is on a regular daily basis. Sometimes you just gotta roll with it. But she's not crying and she's happy next to me, so it is what it is. And then I like to go back into the outer corner and just replace some of that pigment that was lost when I put my metallic lid shade on. So I start in with the black on the outer V again, because a lot of it was kind of lost in translation. And then also too, that's helpful for if you want to add a little more depth. Go in with that mid-tone, kind of darker brown shade again, which was Ritual. And I put it between my lid shade, that metallic shade, and the black. just so that it's not a harsh line between a black and lighter shimmer shade. And then it just is blended and it flows better. And then you can do that as much as you feel like it's blended. And then you have a gradient from light to mid-tone to dark. And then a helpful tip that I have for you is to clean up some of this fallout. I don't know if you can see, this is a little bit lower than I would prefer it to be. What I like to do is I like to take a makeup remover wipe and just follow that line and clean it up. I usually like to go from the bottom of my lash line and drag it up just so it's a little bit more of like a lifted look. I've seen some people use tape, apply tape first and then go in and do your eyeshadow. But the thing with that is tape is an adhesive. So sometimes people have allergies. So I go in and I clean that up. And already that made such a huge difference. And I also like that tip because it also, if you decide to do winged liner, it gives you a little bit of a guideline so you know exactly where to place that winged liner. And I'm going to do my eyeliner off camera. I'm going to do winged liner today. I usually like to use the NYX Epic Ink eyeliner. It's a little dirty, don't mind that. But I am going to do that off camera and I will meet you back here in a second. Okay, so you can see off camera I have done my eyeliner and put some mascara on, and what a big difference that makes. You can always stop here if that is to your liking and just do eyeshadow and mascara on the lash line, the lower lash line. You can stop there if you want, but I like to always go in with lashes. Lashes make a huge difference. So today I am going to be using the Scott Barnes Vanessa lashes, and I'm going to do that off camera and we'll be right back. And what a difference. I love these lashes. These are actually becoming my new favorites. I've been using them pretty much every single time I've been wearing my makeup. They are not super affordable. I will say they are on the more expensive side, as with all of Scott Barnes' cosmetics, but they're so worth it and they are actually really comfortable. For as long and dramatic and voluminous as they are, I literally can't even feel them on my eyes. So that's a big plus. So I now am going to take a little bit of a step back from doing my eyes, and I'm going to come back to that. So you can always go in with your favorite moisturizer and primer and whatever you feel works best for you. I washed my face actually before starting my makeup. So you want to start off with a clean, fresh base, especially if you are someone who has more oily skin like myself. If you already have a layer of oil on your skin, as time goes on, more oil is going to push out through your pores and it's just going to break up your makeup faster. So I recommend washing your face morning and night, of course, but especially before doing your makeup. It just makes a world of difference. Okay, now that I have a moisturizer and primer on my skin, I will list everything down below as usual. I'm going to go in with my Pretty Fresh Hyaluronic Tinted Moisturizer from Colourpop. I really like this. It is on the lower coverage side, but once I put everything on top of it, it actually does build up more coverage than you would think. I don't have redness, too much redness or discoloration to my skin, so I can usually go with a lighter or medium coverage. I can of course do a higher coverage, but sometimes that just adds more product to skin and things tend to look a little bit heavier and cakier. So I go in with the tinted moisturizer, and then when I'm feeling a little fancy and want to be extra glam, I'll go in with something that's more medium to full coverage. Okay, so now I can start. I will say though, for the realm of tinted moisturizers, this does have a little bit more coverage than most. And on me, for some reason, when it dries down, it's a little bit more matte, but that's okay. My skin is more oily, so I don't mind if it does dry down more matte, but it's not super hydrating on me, which is interesting because it's hyaluronic and it's supposed to give you a dewier look. But on me, it really doesn't. Does this happen to anyone else, or am I just weird? I don't know. And as you can see, this brush is bigger, so it will help me cover more area faster. But I will go in with a smaller brush or a beauty blender just for more detailed work, so I can really hit every little space. And don't forget to bring it down. And if you're wearing like a low cut top, bring it down even lower, because you don't want to have that demarcation line that shows you from where you applied your foundation to where it stopped, especially if it's not 100% perfect color match. But usually with a lower coverage or medium coverage foundation, there is a little bit of leeway, but if you are using something that's more full coverage, there's less room. So now that we're working with something like this, it's a little bit more even and flawless of a base. I am going to go in back with my concealer that I used actually to prime my lid, which was my Kylie Cosmetics concealer. And I don't like to personally bring this down too much. I like to do a little something like this, because it is still that thing of, you know, more product you place on top of each other, the heavier sometimes things tend to look. And I bring it between my brows. This is just a highlight so that it opens and illuminates the face. Then I am going to blend that out with a Real Technique sponge. I like these because these are pretty inexpensive and they're so easy to get. And they do the job. You know, you don't have to spend like 20 bucks for a beauty blender when you can get something for $5 that literally does the exact same thing. I mean, there are some times where I'm like, oh no, you kind of should splurge for the more expensive item because you will get better quality. But when it comes to sponges, like, these companies have come a long way and are producing awesome products to the point where, honestly, I sometimes feel like drugstore is even better than the high-end product. Like, you don't need to use a crazy expensive product. And I like to switch things out sometimes. Sometimes I will use more of a higher end product, and sometimes I'll use something that's like way cheaper that gives me the exact same look, or sometimes even better. I'm just blending that out. And like I said before, that's why I really enjoy this Kylie Cosmetics concealer, is because you have working time. It doesn't dry the second you place it down. And this, I would say, is more of a medium coverage concealer. But if you couldn't tell, I kind of like that. Okay. So now I've got something a little like this. I personally like to set my makeup, but I don't set my entire face. I do like to still have a little bit of a glow. I like to have my makeup and foundation look like skin. I just personally like that. You can set your entire face if you want. I'm actually going in with the Milk Blur Powder, and I'm gonna go underneath my eyes. I don't take a crazy amount on there because, once again, layering, you know, you're putting so much product on there and then it just looks so heavy. And a lot of times it'll feel heavy too. Especially in the summer, I don't use a crazy amount of products because in New Jersey, it can get really hot here. And humid too. And I like to set my forehead because that's where I get really oily. Sometimes if I am feeling a little fancy, I will go in with a like medium size fluffy brush, and I will just take that powder and kind of dust it everywhere. Today, just for the sake of show, I'll do it. But especially like right here where I would place my contour, bronzer, blush, whatnot, because then that way you don't have the products sticking and clinging to that one area, because we are using a liquid foundation to moisturizer. So sometimes if you're using a powder product especially, it will cling to a certain area and you won't be able to get it to move. So like on the outer corners, on the perimeter where my hairline is, maybe even basically your whole face, but you can skip this step, especially if you really want that dewy, glowy kind of look. I'm more on the oily side, so you know, I can go in with some powder, but you don't have to get crazy. Next, I am going to go in with my Scott Barnes contour palette, and I am using the color Carve. These are so pigmented. A little goes a long way. There is a reason these are pro palettes. I am a pro makeup artist myself, and even I sometimes am like, whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot of pigment. So less is more, and you want to be able to build. So I just go in with the, like, already, like literally it was just like the tiniest bit, and you can see just how much pigment is there. And that's another reason why putting powder on these parts of the face is so helpful, because if I didn't put even a little bit of powder there, it would just be a muddy line that I would not be able to blend out. So I'm like using the slightest touch. Of course, if you feel like this is too much for you, don't use this. Use whatever you have. There are some great options at the drugstore that you can use and work with. I'm obsessed with these powders. And honestly, I feel like you get a bang for your buck. Like, these powders are expensive, don't get me wrong, but they're definitely worth the money. And you get a good array of colors too. So you can use it for someone who is fairer complexion, someone who is deeper complexion, and anyone in between. I actually just ordered his blush palette. It was out of stock for the longest time. And then it came back in stock like literally on my birthday. And that was my birthday present to myself. And it's actually should be coming today. So look forward to seeing that in a tutorial soon. Okay. So it just give me a little bit of something to work with. And if you have any harsh lines, you can go back in with that fluffier kind of powder brush and diffuse. And then also it does have a little bit of that powder still on it, so it can help me buff out any harsh lines. Like, I like a pretty sharp contour, but at the same time, you don't want to have lines all over your face. So going back into that Scott Barnes palette, I have a color that is a little warmer. It's called Sliced. And it would be good for a little bit of warmth, like a bronzer. That's another good thing about this palette. There are more like traditional contour, cooler tone colors in here, but then there are also warmer tones as well. So it's kind of like the one-stop shop for powders. I've like really honestly fallen in love with a lot of his products. I'm going to go into blush. There were quite a few years there I did not use any blush on my face, like at all. But now I think blush is literally my favorite product. I love lip products as well, but blush, it just brings life back into your face. I mean, bronzer does that as well, but it just makes your skin look more like skin, because we all have a little bit of pigment to our skin. So the blush just helps bring it back from what the foundation kind of took away. So today, this is actually almost kind of like a first impression. I am using the Cover FX, what is this? Warm Honey blush. I like it because there is a matte side and a shimmer side. So whatever you're feeling for that day, you can go in and mix both of them together, which I think I'm going to do. And I am taking that, ooh, looks very pigmented already, so that's a good sign. I am taking my Morphe M105 brush. It is a blush brush. Blush brush, I like that. And I am going to start, oh yeah, it's pretty pigmented. That's good. I'm going to start with that on more of like the apples of my cheeks and kind of scale it back a little bit. The good thing with this color is, yes, it is a blush, but it's almost kind of like teetering between a blush and a bronzer kind of color. Oops, sorry, the camera is in the way. I'm still kind of trying to learn and figure out how to do things without completely flopping. So you can see already, like that made a lot of difference. Wow, I like this. I actually got it when it was on sale for the Ulta 21 Days of Beauty. This year kind of wasn't that great, but this was a win, 100% for sure. Definitely a win. I also got another color as well. I got to the site pretty early, and by the time I was on the site, like almost all the blush colors were sold out. So I was a little upset. I would have gotten almost all of them, but you know, other people got there a little bit faster than I did, so it's okay. But at least I was able to get two. And then this way also, like say for some reason I really wasn't jiving with these blushes, if I bought all of them, yeah, I could have returned all of them, but that's just a pain in the butt, honestly. And some people like to go in, put a little blush on their nose. It just makes it look a little realistic, I guess. And then I added a lot of blush. So I am gonna kind of diffuse some of this. So, like I told you, I love blush, as you can see. It's just so crazy that I used to never use blush because it's like my favorite product now. I really, like I said, this is more of a first impression. So I would say though, so far, I'm really liking it. I can't 100% recommend it, of course, because I don't know how it wears and how all of that, you know, kind of works out. But so far, I like it. But my favorite blushes I use literally on rotation are my Kylie Cosmetics blushes. They're so good. Like I said, I like a little bit sharper of a contour. I like you to really be able to see that definition. Or like sometimes if things look a little bit muddy, or if I brought the blush, bronzer, contour down too much, I like to go in and clean it up with powder. It's something so easy that you like never would really think about, but it makes a difference, honestly. So I'm using my Morphe sponge. I don't know exactly what this one is called, but I will put it in the down bar below. And I like to go in with a little bit of powder on that flat side and take it underneath where my contour line is and kind of bake a little bit. I am not like the hugest fan of baking, especially on my under eyes. It is no go for me for that, but I'm okay with baking. Ooh. Mirror in the way. Feel free to yell at me about that. Like I already know, like, but don't worry. Anything is constructive criticism. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to grow. I feel like I will only get better at this. I already feel a lot more comfortable than I did when I made my first video. So that is a giant plus. And then it just takes away some of that muddiness. And if the products were brought too low, it just helps kind of erase what was done pretty much. So I let that sit there for a little bit. I'm gonna jump back into doing my eyeshadow. I'm gonna do the lower lash line now. And I'm just to make this more of a cohesive look, I'm going to go in with Ritual, which was that very dark brown shade. And I'm gonna kind of like stamp it on my lower lash line. I could go in with the black, but that's a little bit smokier than I'm kind of looking for today. But you can always go in with black or whatever color. Even if you wanted to do like purple on the lower lash line, that would be fun. You can always jazz it up, do whatever you feel like doing. I just kind of want this to be a little bit more of an everyday but amped up kind of look. So I'm sticking with all neutrals and browns today. just so that this is like a video everyone can refer back to when they're doing their makeup. Not everyone wants to wear like neon eyeshadow and pastel colors. I mean, I could wear that every day, but not everyone is going to be looking for that for everyday use, which I completely understand. I used to be like that, where I like color, would never use it on my eyes. But that's the fun thing about makeup, is experimenting and seeing what works for you. Like personally, I love the look, love the look of blue eyeshadow, but on me, it's not my favorite. If I'm feeling daring, I'll do blue eyeshadow, but otherwise, no, I don't really like it. Okay, so now that I kind of have an outline of that eyeshadow, and I brought it pretty close to the lash line, I'm going to go in with that smaller blending brush, the M507, and I'm going to take a mix of that Ritual color that I just used with Soothe, which is that lighter brown, and I am going to blend and just soften this up so it's not like a harsh line. And if you hear that tapping, I'm sorry, that's me literally tapping some of the pigment off of the palette, because these are pretty pigmented. But there's also, I will say, there is fallout and kick up in the palette as well, which I don't mind. I mean, obviously that makes for a messier palette, but it's so easy to clean up that honestly, it's not that big a deal to me. Sometimes I actually kind of like a little bit of kick up, because then it lets me know that this is a pigmented palette. And then you can go in and just diffuse and blend some more. You don't want any harsh lines. I mean, I don't want any harsh lines. I would imagine most people don't want harsh lines, but okay. Okay, so you can always use black on the waterline, nude, white, whatever you like. Personally, I don't really tend to like black on the waterline because it makes my eyes even more closed off. And my eyes are already almond shaped. They're already a little bit more closed off. So if I add black, it's just gonna shrink them down even more. So I usually tend to leave that either with a nude or just bare. And then I'm going to go in with mascara on the lower lash line, and I'll be right back. So I dusted off my bake. I did lower lash mascara and an inner corner highlight, and now I'm going in with everybody's favorite part, highlight. Today I am using the Jaclyn Hill Accent palette, and this is the Flash palette. These are so stunning. Like, I know everyone is kind of on team anti-Jaclyn, but her powders, like, she did that. I will say they are so stunning. It just looks so wet. Like, look at that. And that was just like one dip in. I am using a mix of iced and sparks. I like ice because it is a little bit bronzier, but still on the light bronze side. And then sparks is more of like a light yellow, goldish kind of color. And it's just so beautiful. It just makes the skin look wet. It's not glittery, it's not chunky, it's just smooth highlight. And I do to my nose, my Cupid's bow, do a little bit of over here and over here, although I don't like to focus it too much right there. Chin a little bit, and then like, as you can see, we are almost done with the look. I'm going to do lips. I am using Colourpop BFF 3 lip liner. It is kind of dark, so I try to use, I can't talk into this. I try to use a little bit of a lighter hand. That way it gives me a little bit more of a wash of color as opposed to intense full pigment, because otherwise this lip liner can be pretty dark and I kind of don't want to go too crazy with it. So I'm just going to follow my lip shape. And for lip liner, you can always overline if that is your preference. Personally, I just follow my natural lip line because I don't want it to be too overdone. There are times I've accidentally overdrawn my lips and it just looks a little crazy. So it's up to your preference, honestly. And then I am going in with my Huda Beauty Staycation lipstick. And this is a gorgeous color. It's pretty neutral, but if anything, it leads more on the side of like cooler toned. But it's not that full on like grayish, beige kind of color either. This is a color that I cannot wear alone. Otherwise, it literally gives me that concealer lip look that was like really popular in the early 2000s. So I need to use a lip liner with this. But depending on your skin tone, you may or may not have to. Okay, so then you can leave it as this. This is more of a matte lip color, or you can do a little bit of gloss, which I'm going to do just a little bit in the center. This is a little bit lighter, so if I put it in the center of my lips, it just, first of all, it'll make your lips appear larger, which I don't really, as you can see, have a problem with that. But it also just adds a little dimension. And I like a glossy lip. Not on a windy day, but I do usually appreciate a glossy lip. Okay, just keep it in the center, and then it just, your lips just look so juicy. So you gotta love that. So last but not least is setting spray. I have used powder, of course, to lock in my makeup, but I do use setting spray as well. First of all, it will help melt in the powder so that it does look more like skin. And this one is the Milani Make It Last setting spray, and it is so good. Honestly, I think it's a dupe for the Urban Decay all-nighter spray, but for literally like, I don't even know, like half the price, maybe even less than that. So I just like to, you know, casually bathe in it. And I have a fan I got off of Amazon. This is so unnecessarily, I will say. This is just like an extra, you don't need this, but I love it. I want to say thank you so much for tuning into my first tutorial. There will definitely be more. I think next time I want to play with a little bit of color, do something different. Something that might be stepping out of your comfort zone. So we'll just have fun and we'll grow on this channel. And thank you so much for hanging around with me and playing with makeup today. Feel free to like this video, comment, and subscribe. It would help me out a bunch. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!